You are currently witnessing something so rare. You don't even know how rare it is. And that is because I usually do not frequent the same spot twice. Like, I watch too much Dateline, right? And I understand, like, human behavior. And so I usually do not do the same thing twice. And I usually don't make the same mistake twice as well. So just something to consider there. But I am in a very similar spot. I am in a very similar background. If you have followed me along in this February challenge, you know exactly where I'm at. You know exactly where you have seen this video. And I just decided to come back, and why not? It looks great. I think my camera might be a little bit crooked. I don't know. I can't tell. But it is also 80 degrees outside. So if you live in the great state of Texas, you know how crazy this weather is, and you know how normal it is that it went from 40 to 17 to 20 to 60 to whatever. So it is 80 degrees outside. It is warm outside. So I'm excited to be out in the elements, and I'm excited to talk to you today. So you can all tell by the description that was on the thing. This video is all about Clemson football recruiting. Obviously, I'm out in the wild. For those of you that don't know, this is the February challenge. So what the February challenge is I am looking at my analytics, figuring out what people want to hear me talk about, and then I am talking about those things. So I am talking about Clemson football. I am also convinced Clemson football recruiting, I think is what it said. I'm also convinced that the people that are watching these videos are honestly just typing in different teams because you want to hear me talk about the different teams. And you know what? That's okay with me. I actually appreciate that. I also just want to compliment my waist in this outfit because let me tell you something. I have been working my butt off to lose weight, to get in shape, to get this body tuned up, and it's working. So anyway, so let me talk about Clemson football. So the interesting thing about Clemson football is very interesting because I feel like all the teams I've talked about besides Miami, my team has actually played this year. And so is my mic on? My mic is on. And so there's a rabbit. Now I'm distracted. But anyways, the Clemson Tigers are interesting to me because my Texas Longhorns got to play Clemson. And I'm glad that the Texas Longhorns played Clemson this year because I think next year Clemson is going to be something interesting. So from what I know, based off of what I saw of them last year, their quarterback, is it Cade? He went to school in Texas. Ooh, I cannot think of his name. Cade Klubnik? I don't know. Quarterback play, very good. It's very solid. He's not like spectacular. He's not like whatever, but he extends plays. He keeps plays alive, and he looks good in the pocket. So I know Clemson has him. The other thing I know about Clemson is they have really good young receivers this year. And so those young receivers actually gave Texas problems towards the end of the game. And so I know that about Clemson. I also think that Clemson has a really good linebacker or defensive lineman or somebody that is pretty decent. Now, I will be honest and say Texas basically dominated them at the line of scrimmage, and they were able to win the game because they did that crazy thing where they had the long drive. However, Clemson came fighting back. And the reason why I think Clemson came fighting back doesn't really matter because I feel like so many times in football games, like at the end of the game, different things happen and we're like, oh my God, this and that. And I'm like, yeah, but like if the game was ever tight with those things would have happened, I don't know. So I'm not going to sit here and say Clemson's not good and like their comeback wasn't real. But, you know, you kind of have to take it with a grain of salt. You know what I mean? A bug literally just, anyways, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. But a bug just violated me out here in the wild. A freaking bug just violated me live and on camera. And that's the other thing about coming outside, like all of the elements and all of the things that happen outside. Like you never know what you're going to get outside. There's also like a light breeze. And so that is interesting. So I don't know what's going to happen there. And for those of you that are keeping track at home, I think this is my third time here or my second time here. I don't even know at this point. So I'm just kind of doing this thing. Anyways, okay, Clemson football. So Clemson football recruiting is what this is supposed to be about. So in order to talk about recruiting, though, you kind of have to like lay the groundwork, right, on what is needed. So I know last year when Texas played Clemson, they were without their running back. I believe he got hurt. So the interesting thing about Clemson, though, is good old Dabo Swinney was like, I'm not going to use a transfer portal. No transfer portal. The Texas Longhorns, my Texas Longhorns, were able to get Andrew Makuba out of the transfer portal from Clemson, hook him. We were also able to get a 5-star or a 4-star that was going to go to Clemson, that decommitted to Clemson, that decided to come to Texas, and he is now at Texas in our freshman class. So that is that. How was that for recruiting? Texas out there recruiting, doing your thing. Anyways, that is not what this is about. So Clemson recruiting. So what I know about Clemson recruiting so far is nothing. I don't know anything about Clemson recruiting. I do know that Dabo Sweeney has actually realized that he is hurting his team, and he has decided to actually start recruiting for Clemson, which I think is good. I will be honest and say Clemson is an interesting team to me because they're in the ACC. And if you've watched my video on Miami, you know what I feel about the ACC. So Clemson is interesting because they're in the ACC. And I believe like they're one of those teams that like, they're just interesting to me. Like I feel like for a long time, like they were at the height of the football world, right? They were winning national championships and they were doing all these things. And then the transfer portal happened and then all these things started happening. Clemson was just one of those teams that was just like, they were just one of those teams, right? They weren't really like, is my shirt off balance? I feel like my shirt is kind of like, there it is. Okay. I feel like my shirt is centered. Okay. Sorry. I really should have probably checked this before I hit record to make sure that I was like centered and my outfit made sense. Am I centered? I feel like I'm moving too much. Okay. Clemson football. What was I talking about? What was I talking about? Are my elbows ashy? I don't know. Anyways, what was I talking about when I was talking about Clemson? I was talking about Dabo Sweeney, and I was talking about how he decided to he decided to start. Okay, so yes, so okay. Clemson football recruiting. So the interesting thing about Dabo is I feel like he was like at the top of the football world for the longest time, and he was all of these great things. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. This is why I can't come outside. I don't know if you can hear what's happening in the background, but I am convinced that right beyond this, there is like a free something or whatever. And there's like a lot of birds and there's probably like foxes and a lot of like crazy things that happen back there. And so what will happen is you will hear like the birds and you'll start to see them like go high and then like dive into, what's going on. And so I get distracted because I can kind of see them in my camera. And then all of a sudden I'm turning around and I'm like, yeah. And then so Dabo, and then he did this and did this as I'm like watching the wilderness. And that is not what this video is about. This video is about the Clemson Tigers, Clemson football recruiting. So I think Dabo has now figured out. I am so sorry. Okay. I'm focused. I'm ready. The Clemson Tigers, the Clemson football recruiting, this is what is happening. Dabo has realized that he needs to go to the transfer portal. And so Dabo has decided to start going to the transfer portal and he has decided to start getting athletes. I do feel like Clemson is primed to do well this year. I do feel like based on the team that I saw last year, based on the little bit of information I feel like is kind of like stumbling across my preview, that I think Clemson should be okay next year. And I think that the cool thing about Clemson, or really the cool thing I always say with teams is this. If you have a returning quarterback, check. That is a great thing, okay? You have a returning quarterback, check. If you have a returning head coach, okay, check. If you have returning OCDC, that is also a good check. If you have returning production, that is a check. And so I think Clemson has some of the things that I say that are like the markings of like what could be a good football team. I think Clemson has those things. So that's good. So kudos to Clemson. And I don't know what they're doing in recruiting, honestly. Like that's the hardest thing about this challenge is I honestly don't know what is happening with a lot of these teams. But from what I do know, from what I did see, and because my Texas Longhorns played against Clemson, and because I know a lot of the guys that we were playing against this year they kept saying they're going to be back on the team next year. They're going to be back on the team this year. I think Clemson is on the right path. Dabo has opened his eyes and he has stepped into 2025. So he's going to be recruiting. So that is good for them. I also think anytime you have a quarterback, like I say, anytime you have a quarterback and that quarterback can really be your foundation, I think it's super helpful. The other thing I want to say here, I want to be very careful about what I say about a quarterback. I think when you have a quarterback that has been in your system, like Cade Klubnik. When you have a quarterback that has been in your system like Cade Klubnik, he also has had coaching. Oh my gosh. He has also had the same head coach. So he's able to kind of understand what's going on there. So I like that connection, right? So you have a quarterback that has been to the playoffs, that was there last year, that is now back this year, who should be a year better, right? After going through offseason, things like that. You have a head coach that you know Cool, you're good there. Then you have receivers that you're familiar with because you started becoming more familiar with them in the year, right? So that's good because remember, Clemson has that wide receiver. The other thing I think is good about Clemson is that they play in the ACC. And if you watch not my Michigan video, if you watch my Miami video, you know what I think about the ACC. I don't think much about the ACC. There's just certain conferences I just don't think a lot about. And honestly, the committee doesn't think a lot about them either, but whatever. I'll move that on to a different day. I'll leave that alone. And so I am very fascinated to see what happens with Clemson this year. For those of you that are new here, last year I took some time to go think about my teams that are going to be in the playoffs and then the teams I'm going to be watching out for and then the teams or whatever. Clemson last year was on my teams that I'm going to be watching out for in this season. If I think about it, I'll plug that video here. And they were one of those teams I was worried about. I didn't think they were going to make the playoffs. Well, then Miami screwed it up, so that's that. But Clemson this year is going to be a team that I'm going to be paying very close attention to because I believe they have a lot of people returning and I believe they've probably recruited well. I'm guessing. I don't know. I haven't really let's be honest. Who deep dives Clemson? Unless you're a Clemson fan and that's your team, or unless you're in the ACC, who outside of I think Clemson's in South Carolina. Clemson in South Carolina? I think so. If you don't live in South Carolina and you are not a Clemson fan and you are not an ACC fan, who really researches Clemson? Let's be honest. If they won a championship, okay, but they didn't. So who honestly takes the time to research Clemson? If you take the time to research Clemson, good on you. I do not. So I don't know a lot about Clemson football recruiting. So I am just rambling about the things that I do know. And I'm out here in this gorgeous view and this gorgeous weather, so I'm kind of being a little bit selfish. And I will be honest with you, the next video I record might be in the same background because I am actually obsessed. I'm obsessed. I cannot act like this is not my favorite background because it is. It is literally my favorite background. And I can't act like it's not. Don't talk about my loose pants, okay? Because I'm losing weight and trying to get in shape, okay? Girls working on our waist. I know that's right. Anyways, I'm going to end this video here. This is not about me. This is about Clemson, and I'm going on and on and on about my waist and about this view because I'm obsessed with it. But yeah, so those are my thoughts on Clemson football. I don't know where they ranked in recruiting. I don't know where they ranked in high school recruiting. I'm assuming Dabo Swinney still recruits high school talent because why would he not recruit high school talent? Because there's only one coach that I know that doesn't recruit high school talent very strongly, and I'll leave that where it's at because you all know who I'm talking about, and that bothers me, but whatever. So yeah, I just saw a shooting star, so that's pretty cool. Anyways, so yeah, that's what I think about Clemson recruiting. I don't really have a lot to say about Clemson recruiting because I don't know a lot about them, but I do think the team is going to be good next year. I do think Clemson is going to be a team to watch next year, and I think if they stay healthy, and because they're in the ACC, I think they might be one of those teams that everybody needs to pay attention to, look at their schedule, understand what they're doing, and that is what I think about Clemson football. So I am going to end this video here. If you haven't already, don't forget to like, subscribe, comment. Also, don't forget that this is my February challenge where I'm just recording and I'm not editing. So anytime you see me looking around and looking crazy and you're wondering gosh, she sucks at editing. Why doesn't she cut that out? I'm not editing anything in February. I am just rolling it and letting it go. So anyways, I will end this video here. The background is gorgeous. I need to take pictures of the background, but I will see you soon. I'll see you in my next video.